The U.S. is going through an important election, not just for the presidency, but for the Senate, for Congress, several state and local elections as well. And in fact, this year, 4 billion people globally have voted in an election, and the future of democracy has been one of the key issues that many people are considering when they place their vote this year. So with me is Julie Kane, the CEO of Democracy Investments, to kind of explain where we are with democracy and voting and how things look. So I wrote here more than 70 countries and 44% of the world's population having or have had an election this year. Do you have a takeaway yet on how this is going?
It is a record year for elections, and it's been tracked very well by The Economist magazine. And sadly, despite a record number of people going to the polls, it's not looking like a great year for democracy. We're seeing a little bit of backsliding with election fraud. For example, in Russia, the opposition parties were imprisoned, exiled, or they're dead. In Belarus, that election, which was funded by Russia, only loyalists could run. And there were raids on the families of political parties that were imprisoned. And then in Venezuela, we saw both Maduro and Gonzalez declare victory. Gonzalez had the votes. That was verified, and Maduro refused, and Gonzalez is now in exile in Spain.
Okay.
So we're in Syria. They refused the transition of power there. And yeah, sadly, there's...
Yeah, I forgot about the Venezuelans, some of those that, certainly didn't. So these elections, many of them taking places in authoritarian or kind of hybrid.
1/3.
Yeah.
1/3 are happening in those places. We're also seeing some elections swayed by concern for national security. So in Taiwan, the incumbent party was reelected over concerns with China. In Finland, they elected the PM who helped get Finland into NATO. And then in Japan, more concerned there. They're actually proposing an Asian form of NATO going forward. And then in Lithuania, they're increasing their defense spending over concern with Russia.
Yeah. What is leading to this? I mean, the world experienced inflation. Is it economic concerns? Is it security? Is it a combination of all these things?
I think it's all of the above. Exactly. You're hitting it on the head. It's really an interesting time. You're seeing economic worries across all of Europe, in the U.S., concern for cost of living and inflation, India, Mexico, similar things there. The only good news that I've seen so far is, well, of course, the Taiwan election. And then in South Korea, the public has pushed back on Yoon, and in Turkey, they're becoming a little less autocratic. So
interesting.
There's some good news.
Okay, they kind of reverse it because I feel like the past few years have gotten more so. And what about immigration? Has that played a role?
Absolutely.
It seems like about every election.
Yep. Very controversial.
Yeah.
Canada, the U.S.
In terms of like a fiscal expansion, politicians offering to spend big, cut taxes, giveaways, things like that. How does that factor into democracy?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, because I feel like when you're kind of, quote unquote, buying votes, it's not really the best for the whole country.
Right, and plus it raises the debt ceiling, and what's that going to do for the economy?
Any solutions, or how do we get people to be more democratic?
Well, do your homework and be sure to look out for fake news. I think news organizations like yourselves making sure that what is being publicized is giving accurate information to voters. We've got to worry about AI, and disinformation is at an all-time high. Meta came out and said, for sure, there have been fake accounts coming out of, Russia and China. And Microsoft announced the same thing. For sure, they'll be meddling in our election. And sadly, it's a global phenomenon.
So let's talk about democracy investments. What do you look for when you pick investments, and how has your performance been since inception?
Oh, thanks for asking, Jade. So we have a very simple systematic process. We don't pick stocks. What we do is we neutrally reweight an international portfolio using the Economist magazine Democracy Index. And those country scores, the data that we use, have 60 different indicators that roll up into themes such as civil liberties, political participation, political culture, and most importantly for this year, electoral process. So our methodology, 12 of those 60 indicators are around election integrity. How free and fair is the election? Is there security for voters and election workers? And is there a peaceful transfer of power? So in our international strategy, we're ex-US. You are getting more in countries such as Norway, New Zealand, Taiwan, Australia, and you're getting less in China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. So those first three countries have a perfect score in our electoral process.
That was
Norway, New Zealand, and Australia. Okay. Perfect. I mean, there's probably 8 that have a perfect score. And then we downweight countries that have a 0 score. And that would be China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE.
Yeah. You downrate investing in companies in those countries?
Correct.
Okay.
But you're still getting exposure. Okay. But you're getting it according to that country's democracy score. So it's a way to get your international exposure and account for geopolitical risk, election integrity risk, and still, you know, for your ex-US portfolio, if you're international, get some more exposure to democracy.
And how has that method performed for you?
Well, since inception, we're over 3.5 years old. Our Democracy Investments International Index has outperformed the MSCI ACWI ex-US index by 5%. Okay. So that's over 3.5 years.
And how can somebody find out more if they want to invest in Democracy Investments?
At democracyinvestments.com. The Democracy International Fund, ticker DMCY, is listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay. Julie, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jane.